Hi guys, welcome back to this Qlik Sense tutorial, and today I'm going to show you guys how to build tables in Qlik. I'm going to specifically show you as well how you can do conditional formatting and how you can add sparklines to your tables. Now, tables are a staple on my dashboards because people love to see the raw data, the raw numbers that sit behind some of the other visuals. So let's get into it. First and foremost, on the left hand side, I've got my custom objects and I'm going to get my layouts container. And I have explained this before why I use this, but essentially when you use a layout container, it allows you to have more control over the size of your visuals, how big and how small they are. Whereas when you don't use a layout container, you are restricted by your dimensions. So I'm going to go back to charts on the left hand side here, and you can see there are loads of different charts that we can select. And you'll also notice that you have a selection between a straight table and a table. Today we are focusing specifically on a table. So I'm going to drag and drop this item onto my canvas. Excellent. So the first thing I'm going to do is I need to add my dimension. So this is a sales table. Essentially, it will make sense at the end of this tutorial, but I'm trying to show people what my sales look like per quarter, per product. So the first thing I need to do is add a relevant time series or date series, should I say. And in this case, I want to look at it by year quarter. So the quarter per year. So you can see here that I have 3 different quarters, Q1, Q2, Q3, all within 2024. Excellent. The next thing I want is my product category. So for this one, I'm going to, I'll go back into my table. I could go edit properties, add column. I click on dimension because this is another dimension. Remember here, we're not doing any form of aggregation. And what I'm looking for is my field that has all my different product categories, which is here. Wonderful. So now we can see if I come out of edit mode, we have beauty products, books that we sell, clothing items, electronic items, home appliances, and sports products. And what I'll do as well is I'll just expand this table, make it a lot easier for you guys as viewers to view. Great. So now what I want to show you guys is essentially what I want to do here is say, for all of our cells per category, per quarter, what percentage does that make up of our overall cells for that quarter? So what I'm going to do here once again is I'm going to edit properties. And on this occasion, I'm not going to select the dimension tab because we're doing an aggregation now. So we're going to need to use the measure tab. Excellent. Now, what I can do is you can use some measures that I've already made, and we will be using some of these. But in this case, I'm going to open up my expression box. Now, I have actually already made the expression. So I'm not going to sit here and bore you guys where you're going to see me type out the expression bit by bit. I'm going to paste it in and show you guys, break down exactly what it means. So let's take you back to the very beginning of this expression. Essentially what I'm doing here is this is sum. So add up all of my revenue. I then want you to divide this by my total revenue for each quarter. Does that make sense? So what I'm saying here essentially is, let's say we have our product categories. So we have beauty products. I've spelled that wrong. We have beauty products. As you saw, we have sports products. We have home appliances. Okay. Now, all of these contribute to, let's say, 2024 Q1 sales. Okay. Let's say we have, I don't know, 50 sales here. We have 60 sales, and we have beauty products. Let's say that we sold, I don't know, 30 beauty products within Q1 of 2024. So what this is saying, and then let's say maybe to make it make sense more, if I copy this, in Q2, I'm going to slightly change the variation of our sales. I sold, I don't know, 70 and let's say beauty products and 80 sports products. So what this is saying, this part of my formula is what percentage of my total sales for that quarter did those products make up. So the calculation is really saying, for example, beauty products, we sold 30 out of 30 times 60s, 30 plus 60s, 90 plus 50s, 140 out of 150 products. That's my total sales. What percentage of my total sales did beauty products make up in Q1? Once again, in Q2, 70 plus 80 is 150, plus 50 is 200. So it's 70 divided by 200. That is what that calculation is saying. Total in Qlik, the total function says, give me all of the sales, give me the overall value. But the arrows here, what they are saying is, give me the sub-aggregation, okay? And the sub-aggregation on this occasion is the quarter, Q1, Q2. Hopefully that makes sense. The second part of this expression, essentially, why I'm using the num is how I want this to be formatted. Because do remember, 30 divided by 150 will give us a value such as 0.48. Let's say, I know this is not the exactly correct value, but let's say it gave us 0.47. But we want to display this as a percentage. So in order to display it as a percentage, what the num is doing is making sure that we display this, for example, as 47%, okay? So just to recap this, the main part of our expression here is to calculate what proportion of our sales our products makes of our overall sales for that quarter. And then essentially what the num function is doing is how we display it. It's making sure that we display it in the correct presentation. And just remember, in Qlik, you can always make sure you can reconcile your expression by looking at the ribbon at the bottom of the screen. If at the bottom of the screen it says okay, then you have a correct expression. If you see here, if I adding just by accident, I don't know, I'm gonna add let's say a word, I don't know, I'll just add in sold. You can see it's an error in expression. This expression is incorrect. So always use your ribbon at the bottom of the screen to reconcile your expression, whether you have an expression which actually makes sense. Okay, good. And there you have it. We can see there for every single one of our products per quarter what percentage of the sales they made up. Let's change that now. We can also change the label because this doesn't mean anything to anyone. This doesn't mean anything. So what we need to do is give it a more realistic title. We can just put percentage sign and I'll put percentage of sales. And there you go. That makes so much more sense. The next thing I want to do is say, okay, we know what proportion of our sales each product makes up, but we still want to know how much revenue this is actually generating. And the way that we can do this is by once again adding another column. Okay, so remember, whenever we're doing aggregation, this can't be a dimension, it has to be a measure. Okay, and all I really want to know is figure out what our total sales are for each product. So what I do here, I've already pre-configured this field. So I could use this. It's probably the easiest way for me to do it. So in fact, I'll show you guys just so if you've never done it before, but Qlik has sum, and essentially remember that we need to in order for it to perform this calculation, we need to give it some information. We need to pass some arguments into this. So here I have my field, which is total revenue, and voila, we can see, if I come out of edit mode, we can see exactly how much revenue this made. But there is one issue with this. I don't know if you noticed, but I have no idea in terms of what currency this is. Okay, is this sterling? Is this dollar? So for someone reading this, it's actually quite difficult to interpret. And also here, we still have it to 2 decimal places, and I think we just want to round this up as a whole number. So how do we do that? Okay, but yes, this is hard to interpret in my opinion. So let's make this better. Let's go one step further. And if you remember, I showed you guys the num expression when we're looking at our percentage of sales. And that's all we're going to do is add this in here. So I'm going to remove this and I'm going to put our full statement here. So what this is saying is, once again, give us our sales. So add all of our sales per product. But what I want you to do is format this in the correct unit. So I want to round it up. I don't want it to 2 decimal places. I want it as a whole number, and I want to know what currency this was. I'm in the United Kingdom, so I'm going to say that this was in sterling as an example. Excellent. Now this makes a much more sense. And once again, our label, we need to change this. So if we go into our column, we can see our label here, and let's just call this total revenue. Okay, now we're getting there. That looks much better. I know the percentage of sales. I know what that actually total revenue was in terms of monetary value. The next thing I want to know is, okay, well, how many units did we sell of these products? How much of these products did we actually sell? So once again, I'm going to add column. I'm going to go into measure, and if you've watched any of my previous tutorials, you would know that I've already made units sold a master measure within Qlik. So essentially, all I'm doing here is what you've seen with total revenue. It will be the sum of my relevant fields. And at this point, I'm going to show you guys how we can also display total revenue. We can display this as spark lines. Okay, so what I'm going to do, if I go back to my total revenue, and I'm just going to take this aspect of the form. I'm going to take my original form that you saw me have. Add column, measure. I'm going to open up my expression box, and once again, I'm going to apply total revenue. But if you go further down, you will be able to see that we can change the way that we represent this. So text is as you see it now, but I actually want to show this as a mini chart. And once again, in order to show this as spark lines, I can also choose my dimension. And for the purpose of this tutorial, I'm going to select just the date. Okay, you can see here I have date as a field, and there you have it. If I take away out of edit mode, we can see now that we've got a mini chart. We've got the visual representation of what's happened with our sales. Essentially, this £1,500 that we've made for beauty products, how did we get here? What's the journey been? And we can see, okay, well, we had a period where we had a real spike in sales, and then you saw they dipped again, and they started to generally level off. That's been the trend. Okay, we can see home appliances. Oh, we've had a massive uptake in those sales. Essentially, we've been able to the visual chart is just a representation of the journey that we've been on with the cells that you're seeing. And I have the same issues I had previously before. I need to give it an appropriate label. So once again, I will say it's called total revenue. Excellent. So I'd say now I've got a pretty solid base, but I think we can make this a lot better. I think this would really benefit if we was able to use conditional formatting here. Okay, so what I'm going to do once again is I've already made my formula, my expression to apply to this table. So rather than sitting there and boring you guys with typing it out individually, I'm going to copy and paste my formula once again and show and explain to you how it actually works. Okay, so as I said, I will copy and paste my formula in here and I'll explain it to you guys. So let's start right at the top there. Let's start with sales. We've got our percentage of sales. I think at the moment it's quite hard to look at initially and find out what's going on. So I'm going to apply here conditional formatting. I'm going to explain to you guys exactly what's happening. ARGB is essentially the formula, the color formula that I'm using to apply conditional formatting. And what ARGB is literally saying is A represents the alpha, and that refers to the transparency. Okay, so essentially how light, so to make it easier, the strength, it is the strength, the strength of the color. Okay, so by that I mean whether it's a, for example, dark green or a light green. Okay, that's what that does essentially. The RGB aspect is red, green and blue. This refers to the actual color that you are using. Okay, and the formula here, let's call this part the filling of our sandwich. This is essentially trying to figure out how light or how dark we should apply our color. Okay, so let me really break this down and make it make sense. 20 is the lightest color that we can have. Okay, so let's say the color that I am using here is, the color I'm using here is essentially a teal, a blue-green color. So the first part of this formula is saying this is the lightest greeny blue that we can have, and this is the darkest greeny blue that we can have. And every single one of our data points within our table, the strength of this is calculated using this formula. So basically, what is our ratio? Our ratio is decided by this. So the range min and the range max here essentially keeps our make sure that our ratio, if you ask again from your iPhone. Oh, there you go, Siri's going. Our ratio sits between 0 and 1. That is what the range min and max is doing. Okay, so this is making sure that we scale each of our different entry points, our data points, between 0 and 1. So if I just give this formula here, what this is saying is that this, like I said, this has to sit between 0 and 1. So essentially, let's say that our ratio is, I don't know, minus 0.45. And we also have 0. It's going to make sure that we cannot have a number below We cannot have a negative number. So if this is to be the case, that this is our ratio, it will take the larger number, which will be 0. Okay. If our result, let's say we have, actually you got 1 there, and our result is, I don't know, let's say 21, it will take the smallest number, which is 1. Okay, so this part of the formula is making sure that we scale appropriately. And as I said before, the strength of our color is basically our lowest number that it could be, the highest strength of our color multiplied by our ratio. And like I said, this is what our ratio here sits in our range max. If our ratio is below 0, negative, it will take 0 as the number. So hopefully that makes sense to you guys. And if I apply this formula, there you go. There you have it. So just for me to explain how this actually works, you can see here that this is Q1. All of these are Q1. So this color coding is applied for Q1. You see, once our percentage or our highest proportion of sales came from electronics in Q1, our lowest percentage of sales came from books, and that is why this is the lowest green, or the lightest green. Once again, if we go into Q2, electronics again was our best performing product. It has the strongest green, and then we can see that in Q2, 184%, which is books, is our lightest green, because this had the smallest percentage of our sales. So now we can very clearly see who our top performing product was and our worst performing product was for each quarter. Now, I think that we can apply the same color conditional formatting to each of these different fields, because essentially the information, this won't change, so I'm going to do this for you guys now. So if we go to total revenue, and I'm going to apply my background color expression again for you guys. Excellent. And if I go to units sold as well, and I'm going to apply the same formula to units sold, and I'm going to apply the same formula once again to total revenue. Now, you could actually argue that for units sold, this formula needs to be tweaked, because just because we have sold, we've made the most amount of revenue, it doesn't mean that this has our highest proportion of sales in terms of units. But what I would say on this occasion is that actually maybe we're more focused on the revenue. It doesn't matter if we sold 600 units of an item if it still brings us in the smallest amount of revenue. The focus here is this product generating adequate revenue? So that's why I've decided to stick with the conditional formatting, exactly the same formula for units sold as total revenue and percentage sales, in case anyone is wondering why I have decided to do that. But I also think it looks a little bit strange having our date series and our products just a blank color. So I've decided, in order to make it a little bit more aesthetically pleasing, to apply a single color to both of these columns, to these columns, and I will show you this now. And what I'm going to do is, for our date series, I'm going to give it a hex code. So this hex code is essentially for a pink. If you type in Google color picker, you will be able to go on there and you'll be able to find lots of different hex codes, deciding on what color you'd like to pick. So I've just gone for a pinkish color, and I'll also apply it to our product category. And there you have it. That is exactly how you can compile a table in Qlik. So just to summarize, what I've done here is my first two columns. The first column is our date series. My second column refers to each product. I then wanted to know what proportion of my overall sales my product made in that quarter. I then wanted to say, okay, what was the monetary value? What was the revenue? How much is it actually generating in terms of our actual currency, which in this case is UK pound sterling? How many units did I sell? And then I wanted to see the trend over time. So essentially what I'm saying is this value here, the revenue made, the proportion of sales that it makes up, what was the journey to get there? And I can see within my spark lines the peaks and troughs essentially of my each product. And then we went one step further. Then we said, you know what, we want to make this aesthetically pleasing. So I applied conditional formatting using ARGB. Remember, alpha refers to the strength of your color, RGB refers to what the actual color is. And then we finished off by applying a hex code, which you can find on colorpicker.com, and I went for a simple pink just to make the whole table aesthetically pleasing. So hopefully guys, this gives you insight into how you can use Qlik Sense to implement tables with conditional formatting, with spark lines, and to give a nice comprehensive summary of your sales. If you have any questions, please feel free to drop me a comment with this video, and I'll be more than happy to respond and answer questions. Until next time, see you soon guys. Take care.